Located at 267 West Center Street in the heart of downtown Marion, is now accepting applications from adults, students, and seniors. The Harding Center is a beautiful historic building offering one-bedroom apartments and efficiencies at affordable rental rates. All utilities are included. Basic cable and internet are available. The Harding Center is equipped with an on-site laundry facility for its residents. The property is located on the Marion City Transit bus line, and off-street parking is available. The Harding Center is managed by Starfish Building, LLC, Lois J. Fisher and Associates. For more information, contact them at hardingcenter@gmail.com or give them a call at 740-223-3288. The Harding Center, a beautiful place to live in the heart of downtown Marion. This is Scott Spears, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Scott Spears Now. Today we have a very unique topic with a very unique guest. He is the man who is known as the Chaplain of Bourbon Street. He is the Reverend Bob Harrington. You might remember him from his many appearances on talk shows, especially the Phil Donahue Show, with legendary atheist Madalyn Murray O'Hair. We're going to talk with Bob about his relationship with Madalyn Murray O'Hair, what he's up to now, why he stopped being a reverend at one point in his life, and God himself, or itself, whatever you believe. It's the Chaplain of Bourbon Street, the Reverend Bob Harrington, now on Scott Spears Now. This is Scott Spears, and today I'm joined by a man who has carved out a corner of history with his career in ministry. He's known all over the world because of his radio and television appearances. Known as the Chaplain of Bourbon Street, he is the Reverend Bob Harrington. Bob, how are you doing? So good to see you.
Well, I'm happy in the Lord, and it's good to be seen.
Reverend, I want to know about your childhood. What was your growing up like?
I was brought up in the country in Sweetwater, Alabama. Joined the Methodist Church when I was about 9 or 10 years old. And lived a good life because it wasn't the point of living bad in that little town. And kind of spent a lot of my days that way.
How was it you decided to become a minister?
Well, I got called to do that. I have a calling from God to be a minister, to go and tell the story. I was in the church services, and they gave an invitation for those who would like to surrender their lives to the Lord, and I was one of the first ones to go forward.
What do you think propelled you to do that day?
Well, the encouragement came from the Lord himself. He worked at my heart until he got me submissive.
In your opinion, there are a lot of reverends, a lot of ministers. What makes a good minister?
When he wants to, example, follow the Lord, he wants to go and tell, and he's a happy man, because happy is a person who knows the Lord. And I'm a happy person. I wake up happy. I get worse through the day. And so I enjoy this thing called life.
I'm glad to hear that. Reverend, how did you become the Chaplain of Bourbon Street?
Years ago, when I first got saved, I located myself on Bourbon Street, and I had a Saturday night radio broadcast, and one night the mayor of the city stopped by my broadcast, and he said, "You come like the Chaplain of Bourbon Street." I said, "Mayor, can we make that official?" So he said, "Yeah, we can." So he officially proclaimed me the Chaplain of Bourbon Street.
And what was that like, being very well known in that area?
It was beautiful. It opened every door I wanted to go into. It took me to places that only God could take you. And so it was beautiful.
New Orleans seems to be a place where a lot of partying goes on. Was it hard to be the chaplain of Bourbon Street?
Well, it was fun to be a chaplain because a lot of partying is going on, but that gave me prospects everywhere. That gave me people to deal with, people to pray for, people to help and encourage, and I spent my time doing that.
What do you feel made you a compelling television and radio personality?
Now, what was that question?
What makes a compelling personality? Radio and TV, you were both on both.
Yeah, I was on all those things. And what makes it compelling is when you're excited over what you're doing, when you enjoy the work of the Lord. And I do that. Because I'm the one that came out with that expression, it's fun being saved. And see, I never heard of being fun being saved. I never heard it being fun to join a church. So I started that movement about it's fun being saved.
What was it like to be on television? Did you like that part of it?
I love that title. I enjoyed it very much. I used it very much, and I like to go and tell. I'm a local Christian. I am not a keep quiet person. I like to let the Bible say, let the redeemed of the Lord say so. I'm redeemed, so I say so.
When the television show was catching on big and you were all over the place, did that give you a certain power? Did you feel well accomplished?
It gave you a recognition factor. It gave you identification because people knew who you were. They know what you do, and so they're kind of ready for you when they get to see you.
You released a lot of records. How did that come about?
46 record albums is what I released and published, and 2 or 3 of them were gold records. And that means that sold a lot of them, and they went everywhere. And I just was known for that and other things.
Tell me about the first record you made at the Salvation Army. Laughter, Truth, and Music.
The first one? What about it?
Tell them how it started.
How that first one got started?
You went to the Salvation Army?
Yep. Go ahead with your next question.
Okay. What was the purpose of those records? What did you hope they would accomplish?
Oh, I hope they'd be a witness for the Lord, and also hope they'd make money for me to buy TV times and radio time and all that kind of stuff, because I didn't have anybody supporting me or underwriting me. I had to do it myself.
What do you feel of all the people who have followed you and became preachers, reverends on television?
I think it's fine, because if they're doing good, God will bless them. And I don't mind being followed. I don't mind being an example for those people, because I strictly believe in going and telling.
It's very interesting. One of your big television appearances, we talked about it before we went on the air today, was with Madeline Murray O'Hare, the famed atheist, on the Phil Donahue show. How did your relationship start with Madeline?
Well, it did because I showed an interest in her, about wanting to be with her, wanted to see her, and she liked me. She enjoyed being with me, and she knew that I had fun being saved, even though she didn't go for the being saved part. At least she was with me on these shows.
Did you like debating her?
Oh, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed any kind of recognition factor. Anything that get me before the public, I enjoyed. And she was a good public getter. She could help you get on a lot of things.
Would you call her a friend?
Did I what?
Call her a friend.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she liked me. She enjoyed me, and I liked her, and I enjoyed her. I'm just sorry she's so lost.
Was it hard to be friends with an atheist, being very well known as a preacher?
Well, no, it wasn't hard to me, because I was friend with the sinners. I had a compassion for people who live wrong and went through them.
Now, at one point, I believe her son wrote about this, you went on the road with Madeline. Did you like doing those tours?
Yeah, I did. I helped arrange them. I helped plan them. And I'd pick the city and I'd pick the auditorium and I'd tell her what time to be there, and she was there.
So she became really a good friend with you.
Oh yeah, totally friendly. She enjoyed me. She had fun being with me, and she liked the fact that, well, so what, you believe it? I'm a non-believer. At least we can get along together.
In your opinion, who won those debates?
I did.
And why do you, I thought you might say that, and why do you feel you won those debates?
Because of the way it closed out, with the crowd coming my way and wanting what I was offering and following what I was suggesting and wanting to live right according to the scriptures.
Oh, I know there is. I tell you, I wouldn't be on here locking horns with Madeline Murray O'Hare if I didn't know the Holy Spirit wasn't in me. I tell you, I'd be scared of you.
Would you please define the Holy Spirit? How tall is it? How long is it? How broad is it?
Right now, he's 6'2", weighs 250. And I appreciate being filled with the Holy Spirit, too, because that makes it wonderful. And to have the
all that means that to be 6'2" and 250 is that you're overeating a little bit.
Right.
You're sinning again. You know, gluttony is a sin
it
too.
Surely is. And
so now you got to cut back on that. Then what are you going to do?
Oh, I haven't quite attained perfection yet, but I'm so much more like it than I used to be that it's just wonderful.
But let me ask you something. You know, if you go ahead and you get this miraculous conversion, you hallucinate, and from this hallucination comes a complete change in your personality.
That's right.
Why inflict it on anybody else?
Because it's so
contagious.
contagious.
Leave those poor old BB girls
so contagious.
alone.
Hey,
it is not. If it was contagious, you could just sit back and relax.
Don't you
and
believe
it
it's
would flow.
contagious? 2,000 years since he came, there are more people following him than following you.
Really? Come on.
Don't you believe
Jesus Christ came in the year 325 at the Council of Nicaea. He hasn't even been around
500 BC.
years.
He came.
And then that was a fairy tale in addition to that.
Is that right? I tell you what made that fairy tale come real in me and become reality in me is when I had a personal experience with the Lord, and the date is not really important. Oh, it's wonderful. I believe I will never get over it. It's wonderful, and I don't need to be treated from it. And you know, the Lord in my type of life and the type he wants us to have creates a much more contagious atmosphere.
Well, why don't you just take this thing, whatever it is that you're afflicted with,
and share it around?
No.
And
take
try to get you converted. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Go back someplace and live in your nice little blessing all by yourself. Because
why should I be by myself?
Religion should be a private affair.
No, he said witness to everybody.
A very private and personal. He said.
Jesus said witness to everybody.
Yes, but
every
he doesn't
creature.
Say this to
and
me.
you're a creature, aren't you, Madeline? You are a creature created in God's moral and spiritual image. And you were raised up in a church.
I am created in whose image? I am created in no image except other human beings. That's all there is.
Well, all human beings
I'm not quite sure that I want to be subscribed to being an animal, but not to subscribe
to being a creature. Doesn't necessarily mean an animal. It means a creature, that representation of the life that God gave us. See,
God didn't give us any life. Now you know that your father gave you your life.
Well, thank God for that. I'm glad he had a part in it.
No, not thank God for that. Thank the fact that your mother. No, thank the fact that your mother and father had a good time one night.
Surely
this is what I thank for. I hope that I was conceived in an act of love and not an act of drudgery. Do you have a good time like that, Madeline? Huh? I have a good time in every direction. I have a good time intellectually.
Are you really happy? Are you really happy?
Sometimes I'm almost ecstatic. My husband tells me, as a matter of fact, that if he could just bottle up what's inside of me and we could sell it, we'd make a fortune.
Let me ask you a question. I have an answer to what motivates me. What motivates you? What keeps you turned on? What keeps you going? Like on this television station, we're not going to have anybody write in and send us contributions. And
oh, yeah, you can do that, too.
Huh?
Every atheist can do that, too. I need it.
Sure, they can. And listen, but what motivates you? What keeps you turned on?
The same thing that keeps every other human being turned on. The same thing that keeps a cow turned on, that wants to continue to live and wants to have the fullest, richest kind of life they can. The same thing that keeps a frog turned on. The same thing that keeps a rose bush turned on. Just absolute nature and nothing else. It has no divine intervention, no nada. Nada. There's nothing there.
How did you get like you are?
That's very simple. I read.
Read what?
The Bible.
And from that you got
Boy, what a bunch of hogwash that is.
Yours didn't take, did it?
No, it sure didn't.
You got vaccinated, huh?
When it came to vaccination there, I'll tell you, there was nothing for me because you can't believe those absurdities.
I can. It's much easier to believe them than it is not to believe them. The results are greater.
That's not true.
Huh?
That's not true.
Yes, it is.
Because what you do then is lock yourself away from reality and go off on a great big old binge someplace. All that you are is you're just high on this kind of stuff.
Right.
And sooner or later you'll come back down to earth.
12 years now. How long has yours been going?
Let me see. I'm 50 years old. This started when I was 13. 37 years.
It's wonderful. Boy, when I'm 37, I don't believe I'll be able to sit still. If it gets much better, I believe I'll just rapture. You know, one of these days that's going to happen, too. The Lord's going to come back and get all of his saved children and take us up in the sky to be with the Lord. Won't that be something?
Yeah, wouldn't that
I want
be
you to
something?
go with me.
No, sirree, Bob.
Come on.
First off, do you really believe that
really
Jesus
believe.
Christ is going to come down through a shaft of light?
I believe it.
You have to be kidding.
No.
I honestly
believe it, and I thank God I do.
And nobody's ever put you in a nice little cozy jacket all of your own in a nice little padded room?
Yeah. My wife and her mother-in-law, when I got converted, my wife and my mother-in-law, when I got converted, they took me to a psychiatrist to have me adjusted, and I led him to the Lord. And now he's worse than I am. You know what he said? He said, I need what you got. Well,
he was probably a Christian to start with.
Well, maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe
now,
so.
you know that we have a whole school of psychiatry. It's called rational emotive psychotherapy.
Does it work?
Well, as soon as the person comes into a psychiatrist, the very first thing that they say is, are you religious? And if they are, they say, lay down on this couch, fella. You're going to lose that hang-up.
Isn't that something?
And then it works from there on.
Have you ever met anybody cured or delivered through that type of treatment?
Sure.
Well,
you know, the thing that we deliver you of and the thing that we help you with.
You're going to deliver me?
I think that I can deliver you. I'm starting to feel a little bit of it tonight.
All right, go ahead.
First off, you know, you are taking everything in your life and delivering it outside of yourself for somebody else to make judgments on. When here you are, you're a fine, upstanding, big old boy.
Yeah.
And what you should be able to do is make your own judgments and go about your own life and make your life in the community along with the other hard-pressed economic persons who are struggling for it. Instead of popping out and by the
now wait, I don't think you're talking to one of your usual interviewees here.
No, but you're
not
popping out and you're trying to skim some money off of the surface in order to keep this thing going from you because, boy, it rolls along.
I was making money before I ever became a Christian. I've known how to do that all my life. I didn't have to get a kick to get kicked back.
You were born as a Christian, though.
No,
the only thing that you're talking about is that you have a greater intensity. Oh, nobody.
I was born as a sinner. Do you believe you're a sinner?
No, of course not. I don't believe that anybody's born as a sinner. I think that people are just born, period. And they also are born without religion. You know, religion has to be programmed into them like you program it into a machine.
I wouldn't believe in sin either. If I was you, I wouldn't believe the Bible either. If I was you, I wouldn't believe in heaven.
Now, Bob, you had one of the greatest ministries. You were the chaplain of Bourbon Street. You were touring with Madeline Murray, getting a lot of exposure, and then it all stopped. What happened?
Well, I just kind of slowed down. I got old enough to slow down, and I pretty well covered the tracks of where I wanted to go. I went everywhere I could, and I was not ashamed of the gospel because it is the power of God unto salvation. So I just kept going until my going got tired.
Now, there was a point after those debates with Madeline Murray where you did leave the church. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know what you mean by leaving the church. I've always been church involved. I've always been church centered and had my eyes on the things of the church.
I guess stop being a reverend. You left that title.
What? Being what?
A reverend.
Oh, I didn't mind that at all, because that got me into places that you couldn't normally get into. Being a reverend, being an ordained man of God, being a called man of God, I loved all that.
Now, I was reading a testimony that you had given on your website where you say at one point you had stopped being a reverend and that money had entered into your life.
Well, there was a time when I got a little slow at being a reverend, and I wasn't quite as involved as I should have been, but I kept going and telling as long as I could.
Why do you think that crept into your life? What do you feel crept in that kind of stopped your work there for a while?
Well, I kind of stopped it for a while because I had no interest in it. I had no open doors. I had no places to go. I had no auditorium to meet in. So I kind of slowed down a little bit.
Now, at one point, I read, and I'm not sure if this is true or not, but you were in a hotel room and you were actually contemplating suicide at one point. Is that true?
Well, I got kind of depressed at one time and gave some thoughts to checking out, and but I didn't go that far. But I did have thoughts along that line, but I got myself out of step with God, and I wasn't bold like I should have been, and I wasn't happy like I should have been. But I got it all back.
What do you think got it back for you?
Huh?
What do you think got it back for you?
I think what got it back was I was lonesome for the Lord. I was lonesome for the things of God. I wanted to get back into the action. I wanted to get back where things were happening.
At one point, being the chaplain of Bourbon Street, being on the Phil Donahue show, probably the most popular talk show of the time, having an album go gold, do you miss the attention today, Bob? Do you miss being out there doing all that?
Yeah, I do, because I was a go-getter, and I enjoyed going and getting. And I just got away from that, slowed down a little bit, and just not as many places to go as it used to be.
Are you still asked to go do things?
Am I still what?
Asked.
Active?
Asked. Are you still asked to go places? Yes.
Yes, I am asked to go places, not as many as I used to be, because people don't know I'm reachable, they don't know I'm touchable, they don't know they could get me just by a phone call, and so I just kind of respond to the ones I hear from.
What is life like today?
It's fun. Life to me is fun. I have fun being saved. I have fun witnessing. I have fun talking to people about the Lord. I'm having fun with you on this interview.
Well, I appreciate that. It's great fun to talk with you. As I was looking at that video last night, you had an exuberance that a lot of preachers do not have. You were definitely happy to be there.
Yep. It's fun being saved. That's one of my main messages. It's fun being saved. Happy is the person who knows the Lord. And I have a contagion of happiness. And I love to let people see the Lord in me, feel the Lord in me, and know the Lord's in me.
What, Bob, do you have any regrets in life?
The only regret I have is I didn't get saved sooner. And I didn't start serving the Lord sooner. I just started everything a little bit earlier if I had a rerun.
Is there anything you still want to do that you have not done?
No, because I've done just about everything I want to do. I've done the things I wanted to do. I've been the things I wanted to be. So I'll just keep on doing what I'm doing until the time comes.
Bob, I want to talk with you a little bit now about the questions that I think a lot of people have when it comes to religion. A lot of people feel they can't believe in Jesus and God because there's no proof. How do you convince those people that there is proof? They can't see it, smell it, touch it.
Well, they can see it, feel it, and touch it in me. I'm the voice of the Lord. I'm the witness of the Lord. And that's how he spreads his reputation. It's through people who believe in him. And I believe in him with all my heart. I'm non-apologetic as a Christian. And I like to let people know on Sundays I'm in church. Wednesday nights I'm in church. When it's open, I'm there.
Do people recognize you when you go to church?
Yeah, I'm sure they do in the area I go. And the other areas they would too. If they knew I was coming, they'd greet me.
Yeah. Where do we go when we die? There are a lot of theories on this, Bob. I know heaven. But what happens? Do we see our loved ones? Are there just souls? How do we recognize people?
What is this?
What will heaven be like?
What?
What will heaven be like?
Oh, I don't know. It just beats what we got here. And heaven and streets of gold, gates of pearl, and all those kind of highlight things. Just to be in the presence of the Lord will be a heaven to me.
How do we know it's there?
How do we know what?
How do we know it's there? You said it, or
You can die and know it's there real quick. Like you can pass away and you'll move right on in. But just take the word of God. The Bible talks about a heaven. It talks about a hell to miss and a heaven to gain. And so the Bible has a good information about to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord.
Why do bad things happen on earth, Bob? Why do we have cancer? Why do we have death? Why do we have illness?
Because of the sin nature of people. We are born with that nature of sin, and we'd rather do wrong than right, because that's the nature of people who leave off the Lord in their lives.
I want to get your opinion on a couple of current events, Bob, before we get out of here today. Pope Francis, the new pope, recently said that atheists, there's a chance that they could go to heaven because it's a lack of consciousness, not a lack of belief. What are your feelings on that? Do atheists go to heaven, Bob?
Well, atheists can go to heaven if they start believing in the Lord Jesus Christ, because he's the key to heaven. He's the one that unlocks the door for us to get in. So I'm absent from the body one day, I'll be present with the Lord.
Did Madeleine Murray go to heaven?
Huh?
Did Madeleine Murray go to heaven?
Did Madeleine Murray O'Hara go to heaven?
As far as I'm concerned, she didn't want to go, because she never talked about heavenly things. She lived a hell of a life, and she kind of died the way she lived.
Why do you think you were never able to reach her? Nobody was able to reach her.
She didn't want to be reached. She had just locked up her will against anything good and godly. She just didn't care for the things of God.
Did she ever tell you why that was?
No, she said, I believe like I believe because I believe it way. And she just kind of enjoyed laughing about it. And I very much regret the fact that she wouldn't believe, but you have to believe in order to achieve.
She was called at one point the most hated woman in America.
Yeah, she was.
You call her a friend. Off camera, when she was away from microphones, was she a nice lady?
Yeah, she was my buddy. She was my friend. We'd get along real well together. We'd do things together, go places together, eat meals together, and she enjoyed me.
You tried to bring the Lord to her. Did she ever try to bring atheism to you?
No, she didn't try because she knew it was a lost cause. And she just enjoyed watching me do what I do.
You know, Bob, for the people who don't know her story, she died rather tragically. She was murdered by some people who got into her association. When you heard the way that Madeleine died, what did you think?
Well, I just knew that if she didn't give her heart to Jesus, she's going to wake up in hell, because she's going to be absent from the body and present with the devil's crowd, because she never was a believer, as far as I know. She might have become in those last days, but I hope so anyway.
A lot of people feel she met that tragic demise because of her life. Do you feel there's something to that?
Repeat that again.
A lot of people feel she met the tragic demise of being murdered because of being an atheist and the way she lived her life. Do you believe there's any truth to that?
Oh, I don't know if any proof to that or not. She just got checked out, and she checked out real soon.
Another thing that we talk about all the time now, Bob, is same-sex marriage. What do you feel about that?
Things of what?
Same-sex marriage, gay marriage.
Well, if they messed up in their thinking, let them go ahead and get married. You know, what's the difference with us? If you want to believe right, it's man and woman to be together. If you want to believe wrong, man, woman, it all fits in.
Bob, what's your belief? The moment we die, the moment we stop breathing, what do you believe happens?
Well, I believe we'll be immediately absent from the body and present with the Lord. For me, if I died right this moment, this next moment, I'd be in heaven.
There's a lot of stuff going on right now with the President of the United States. What's your thoughts on President Obama?
I think he's a pretty good man. He's wanting to do a good job. He's wanting to offer belief to people, encouragement to people. I think he's a pretty good man.
Do you think we should have health care for everybody?
It seemed to me to be a nice thing to have if we could afford to do it, is to have it for everybody, because everybody
were you ever involved in politics, Bob? Do you like politics?
What?
Do you like politics?
Well, politics is people. They're people. They're either lost or saved. They're not Democrat or Republican. They're either lost or saved. And I deal with people that way.
Bob, I want to, you certainly carved out your own place in history as the chaplain of Bourbon Street. Do you still like to be called that?
Yeah, I like it fine, because I'll always be known as the chaplain of Bourbon Street, because I'm the only one who ever has been, who ever will be that title.
Tell them about Victor Skiro walking by the mayor when you were preaching on Bourbon Street.
I think she wanted me to tell about the mayor.
Yeah, tell how it started.
About how you got it. The name of the Chaplain of Bourbon.
Yeah, how did it start?
It was late one night. I had a Saturday night broadcast, and I used to be on midnight. Midnight Saturday night, and I'd stand in my doorway and do my preaching, and I'd draw a crowd. And one night I had a fellow named Skiro get in line. I said, "What you do?" He said, "I'm the mayor of the city." I said, "Well, what you want to do here?" He said, "I want to call you the chaplain of Bourbon Street." I said, "Thank you, Mayor. I'll use that title for the rest of my life."
Do you get back to New Orleans much?
Do you get back to New Orleans much?
I don't get back enough. I love that city. It's my favorite of all cities is New Orleans. And I have a daughter that lives there, a son-in-law that's president of the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. And they all live and work in that city.
What did you make a few years ago of the terrible hurricane that came through there?
Katrina.
What did I do?
What did you think about when Katrina came through New Orleans and demolished it?
I just got some safe spot, got away from it. I can't compete with storms and hurricanes and lightning, so I'll find me some place to hide.
Is it sad for you to go back today, Bob, and see all of these areas still not rebuilt because of the hurricane?
Yeah, you see, it's a little bit because I love that city. I love what it was before it was torn up. So I like to see it get rebuilt.
Would you ever like to go back on television on a permanent basis? People are doing things on the internet, Bob. Would you like to do that again?
Yeah, it'd be okay with me. I like to do anything I could to spread the word and let people know it's fun being saved.
Tell them you're on Facebook. Say, "I'm on Facebook."
I'm on Facebook.
Yeah, on Facebook, just search Bob Harrington.
Yep.
Perfect. Bob, do you still write sermons? Do you ever get up and preach?
I get up and preach. I just use my same sermons in different places. I change the crowds instead of the messages.
I don't want a whole sermon here, but give me a Bob Harrington part of a sermon that you feel is important.
Well, I always have one on 3 things that make a difference: the Christ you meet, the company you keep, the convictions you seek. That's 3 good points. It talks about meeting Christ as your Savior and competing with Him in ways of God, and it's just a beautiful way to think.
Bob, you're still looking good. You're doing well. But years from now, 100 years from now, when you are gone, how would you like to be remembered?
I'd like to be remembered as a soul winner, as the chaplain of Bourbon Street, who went where sinners were, who identified with sinners. He cared for sinners, and he lived and died his life trying to reach sinners.
What do you make of a gentleman who basically followed in your path like Pat Robertson? Do you like him?
Yeah, I like him fine. I like him fine because there's nothing wrong with being copied if you're doing right. There's nothing wrong with having people mimic you if they do it right. And so I like to go and tell.
Well, Bob, I tell you, it's been a pleasure to have you on today, and I hope you do come back in the future because I still think you have a lot to contribute. You're looking good, you're sounding good, and this has been a lot of fun for me. Thank you so much for coming on.
And thank you very much for having me. It's always fun to let people know it's fun being saved.
Did you have a special way that you signed off your broadcasts?
That was the way right there. I always let people know at the end of my broadcast that remember, it's fun being saved.
That's a good way to end this broadcast. Thank you, Bob. We certainly enjoyed our time with the chaplain of Bourbon Street, Reverend Bob Harrington. We can see that he's still doing well at this time in his life. And what an interesting conversation regarding he and his relationship with the legendary atheist Madalyn Murray O'Hair, once known as the most hated woman in America. What a fun time this has been. We're going to get out of here until next time, but remember, this is Scott Spears saying goodbye and heading for the dugout.